people? What's up, our cryptocurrency? We are doing some kind of show today. I'm not exactly sure what the format is. Hey, class is now in... Whoop, that was some feedback there. Excuse me. Yeah, so I don't know what the format is exactly. And I'm going to rely on some of your experiences here. I don't know if I'm the first person to do the our cryptocurrency call-in format. If so, this is guaranteed to be the best our cryptocurrency Q&A you've ever had. But if not, then I respect any and all rules. Now, format is up to me. All right. Well, we have a huge turnout here today. There's one person. Yeah, thanks, bud. I mean, I got things to discuss, and I don't mind talking to myself here. I mean, I'm pretty good at it even. But I'd like to be of service to you. So, yeah, let you advertise it. In the meantime, I will sit here, wait patiently. I don't know what the archive's going to be on this. Let me see what's going on Twitter. Okay. I can do a monologue here. I got nothing wrong with that. But the goal was to make it interactive. It's a new channel. I understand that. And has to start somewhere. Might as well start with me. Start a lot of things around here. For better and worse. Gets me in all kinds of trouble. But I like that. Blockchain is a programming language for humans. Blasphemers rule the world. It's a good place to start. A new channel. It'll be downhill from there. Or uphill, I don't know. Doesn't matter. What's up, Seth? Hey, Felix. Hey, guys. So yeah, our crypto, for Felix and guys that know me, this is something that our cryptocurrency wanted to do. And I thought it was a nice idea, so I'm here answering their questions today. It may turn into a monologue, it may not. Let's see how much interest we have from you guys. Okay, Calvary's here. Wonderful. Do Bitcoiners suffer from schizophrenia because having multiple personalities is more decentralized? It's a great question. There actually, I think there is a good case to be made for the, how to put it, I want to be very clear about it. Like non-clinical schizophrenia in the Bitcoin mentality, because you see, this kind of harkens to the postmodern condition. I don't know if this channel wants to get into that just yet, but for many people in Bitcoin, they believe that what they've purchased, these ones and zeros, are a rock, and they will switch cognitive modes between like planes of cognition, between conceptualizing their ones and zeros as rocks and interfacing with an actual public. But even in their own minds, they don't know that they're doing the plane switch. And so you can have a conversation with them where you start asking questions and they will flip and flop between these two identities, not knowing which is real. It's not that uncommon even in the modern condition for people to do that about all kinds of things, but it is a little unusual in the Bitcoin space because so much of the ego and self-identity is tied to these products that I think the level of intolerance and indignation is fairly extraordinary if you don't comport with whichever of the two arbitrary planes they're flipping between. Star Trek kind of talked about some of that in I think quite a while back in the mid 1950s about how humans do this, where like you can have completely opposing views and two completely different senses of morality that you would think would intersect on an issue, but that will oftentimes just go back and forth in terms of like the comprehension with another human in terms of which of these two pools of understanding that they pull from. And Bitcoiners really do that. I think it's good because when you invest in Bitcoin, you're kind of like, just because I think people get weird about all kinds of things. And one of them is like the diagnosis, if you will, or the identification isn't bad. It might just be very good. Like if you can make an appeal to what the textbooks say is going on, then you might be able to like quantify it. Like, okay, so then some percentage of the population will have this, and that means that we can expect this much growth in that community. Perhaps. I don't know. Got to be amoral on these things. That's the only way you can get by, best I can tell. Don't try to sit there, look at like something that's a fairly well-observed phenomenon, and then try to moralize it. Just accept that that's the phenomenon and see if you can predict it or not. Try to moralize it, it gets weird. It's really fucking weird. I try not to. Do it all the time. Try not to. There you go. 2 planes. Will there be a chain split? Okay, with thoughts on Bitcoin Core. Yeah, so Bitcoin Core, BTCC, is very, very embarrassing. It's sad to me more than anything else that the Bitcoin Core community is fractured, has decentralized itself in this way, um, because, and this is weird, but bear with me. Um, the notional comprehension of what was purchased that was Bitcoin can't have been led per one paradigm of thinking in the mentality of the Bitcoiner, because this was a rock. Yet, on the other hand, they will switch over to adherence to Bitcoin Core in every way but name, as it's convenient and appropriate. And that creates this like prison politics in the space that I think is kind of cool. It's easy to work with. Nobody else is going to like it because the interface is just deplorable, but I don't really care because this is what has happened. Where you have like a prison politic environment where shot callers make the rules, soldiers enforce them, and nobody can talk about the politics. So if you believe that there are some people who have more power than others, you can't express that without receiving some degree of social shame and a dissension on the social hierarchy. Nonetheless, we all know that it's there. It's very weird to me that people find that acceptable. I don't know that it'll last that way for long, and my suspicion is that that'll change. So when you see Bitcoin Core, what you have is the hemisphere of consideration that comports with the prison politics, making fun of the notion that there is a hierarchy, despite those people being in the hierarchy. And I think a more traditional decentralized world, what you would see is that there would be a rise in intolerance amongst the citizens for this attitude, and that would generally be considered tyranny. But because, and this is where it gets kind of weird, but because I would think happened with this sort of rock paradigm is that a lot of the citizens have centralized themselves. They are the rock. They don't believe in marching. They want to be stationary. Using the power of decentralization, they have weirdly centralized themselves. And so that's kind of what the themes are with Bitcoin Core, BTCC as a currency, I think. Because a lot of certainly the initial value, if not current value, comes from an investment that you make in the ignorance of leadership, and perhaps even in being gleeful or titillated at that. But I don't share that delusion. So for me, I find it a little sad that the state of the community is so incoherent. And therein lies a sort of schizophrenia, I think, in the Bitcoin community. Will there be a chain split on BCH? Good question. My presumption would be yes, but who the hell knows? And right, I think exactly. Bitcoin Jake kind of like sort of talked about some of this already. These notions of chain splits already invalidate the rock thesis, the thesis that this is a rock, because gold doesn't have a version number, and it isn't stationary. Or sorry, it is stationary, whereas these other blockchains are not stationary; they move. People don't like to remember that the honey badger is a marcher, and I don't know why. Other than a prison politic environment where people who consider these things are generally shamed out of the community, or they are otherwise met with significant friction in their expression. It's sad because I don't think that was fine for a while, but I don't think that's going to grow the community to the next level. And if we don't reform that, then I would assume there would be a lot of Bitcoiners with bad taste in their mouth eventually. Van's the bunker. I just love money in general. I understand that. It is a double-edged sword. Money is a very powerful thing, and if you haven't burned yourself with it yet, that's great. But be on the lookout. Your greed will steer you wrong. In fact, your greed is generally the only thing that'll scam you, and the love of money is the easiest way to lose it in many cases. Not all, to be clear, but many. Okay, so I don't know all the details of Bitcoin Core BTCC, but last I checked, it was a Ethereum token that existed as a troll. Are they now doing something different? Because I would have assumed that this would have gone nowhere over time, unless people want to invest in the promotion of ignorance that is the existence of a hierarchy in Bitcoin. Then it would have value, which is a weird financial product. It's a very, very weird financial product. It might actually work in this space because like it's the kind of shit people love around here. Get started, get the wallet. Look at this. What do we got here? So this was released, what, 7 days ago? And before that was on May 29th. Well, someone's putting time into it. That's fine. Begs the question, who the hell is running things there at Bitcoin? And people want to delight in that not being known. And I don't know that that's even true or admirable. What do we got here? Okay. BTCC is faster, more capacity than BCH. I mean, the people want to have these technical debates in the space. And like for our cryptocurrency crowd, I don't know how many of you are inclined to do that. But it seems entirely irrelevant to performance. I would stress this. In 2018, it may change, but in 2018, the performance of any of these assets is completely decoupled from the technology. So I don't know. It's shocking to me that people want to engage in the block size debate in 2018 because it's just such a dead horse and it's completely irrelevant anyways. So like the notion that BTCC is faster and has more capacity speaks to me in the sense that the people who are offering BTCC want that to be the debate. But whether that is the debate is probably no. I don't think it is. What do I think about gaming bringing adoption to crypto space, like digital item ownership? So yeah, this one comes from Jacob Krakowski. Thank you, Jacob. So I think gaming has always been very promising. And even back when I was working with Counterparty, that was like the #1 goal. And to our demise, or at least, our limited success, take your pick, Ethereum wanted to promote this simulation that is the IPO in its token, and that worked well for it. I was shocked by all of that. I thought that was crazy. We at Counterparty really wanted to pursue the gaming market in various ways, and it was too soon for it. I think that we will eventually have bearer assets and bearer instruments in gaming. We kind of saw that with Counter-Strike skins already, and that was clearly very successful up until the point it got scandalous, which is usually how these things work when we were dealing with bearer assets. But yeah, I think that ultimately that's promising. I think there needs to be a lot less decentralization for them. I think that they probably need to see a little bit more of a lead network. I think they need to see a lot more technical proficiency, and I think they need to see a lot less legal risk before the larger gaming enterprises come in. That being said, the indie space would likely adopt this technology more soon or quickly, but a lot of the ICO distraction has probably kept anybody from pursuing them to any degree. Like, why would you spend your time securing a relationship with an indie gaming company if you can instead release a white paper and earn more money doing that and nothing else, and just marketing it to like the crypto denizens? So I think that we've probably seen less traction in gaming as a result of the ICO mania, and that's my guess. Gotta watch out for greed, man. Greed. The thing about greed, like you will be controlled by greed. So like blockchain is a programming language for humans, and one of the reasons why is because humans are programmed through greed. Like this whole notion of like the economy and free markets, et cetera, all of that revolves around some notion of greed somewhere. And sometimes it's very good. Like greed can be an excellent motivator, and sometimes it can be tricky. Like you are vulnerable when you are greedy. If I want to pull a con, I want to find somebody who thinks they're going to win. And if you look at like all parlor games generally, or street hustles, they usually get into people's heads and manipulate them by way of greed. You play this game where like they have like a ringer, and they have like the cups, and you got to like put the apple under the cups, and which one's the whatever. Like it's appealing to your ability to, or your perception that you can beat the ringer. You think you are now in a vulnerable state because you think that you have knowledge that you don't, because of your will to make the money. And then you end up not realizing this guy was a ringer, and they play the fucking shuffle game and you lose. And that's a very common theme. So if you like money and you do want to play the game of blockchain, it would seem to me that one of the things you really have to watch out for is greed motivation. This whole FOMO thing is just the end of everybody. You got to get in before you lose, and before you know it, you're the loser. So taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and understand the market, I think, is the way to play the game of blockchain. Clearly, some people get lucky, and at least in my estimation, they get lucky, and it's very hard to convince them otherwise. People will tell you that their strategy for winning the lottery is the best strategy, and it's hard to argue with them because the people around them will agree that this man's strategy of winning the lottery has been proven. because the sample size was, 1 and the success rate was 100%. And for those of us who perhaps are less inclined to jump at such terrible statistics, we were skeptical, and we're often lamented for that. But I think, what you want to do in the game of blockchain is find people who are bad at statistics, who don't understand these things, and play the game in a way that programs them to believe that they have a winning strategy, and that's okay. We see that a lot on the technical analysis channels. I don't do it because it kind of offends my sensibilities, but I appreciate that these people require this service, I guess, and that's the way it is. Some people just like greed, and they can never get to the second step where they figure out that greed is the way that they're controlled. What communities do you follow and why? Where do you find news? Right. So Telegram, thanks, bud. Telegram is clearly a primary news source for me. Our Bitcoin is a primary news source for me. I find our Bitcoin to be incorrigible because if you don't comport with the simulation of the rock, and if you don't comport with the simulation of inevitability, we can talk about that, then your content won't fly. But I don't believe that the universe owes us success. I don't believe that Bitcoin is a rock. So I don't find very useful or compelling content in our Bitcoin. Our Bitcoin is nice. I don't particularly like the cynicism in our Bitcoin. I find that to be at times a bit depressing, and I don't share it. But at least we'll get something very closely approximating truth in our Bitcoin. So I use our Bitcoin. And then the last thing I love for news, it's such an underrated resource. I don't even like talking about it because it's an underrated resource and I want to keep it my thing. But /biz, 4chan/biz is one of the best resources in the space. And not in the way you'd think. 4chan is, in my estimation, the samizdat. It is the censored thoughts in society. These are things that you may feel alone in thinking, and you are certainly unable to express in a room full of people. So you go on 4chan and you post it. And sometimes that thought is really vulgar. And then sometimes that thought is actually like kind of useful. So when you go through 4chan, you have to kind of, put it through that lens. And I see 4chan's format as a bit of a zeitgeist. It is the state of the latent thoughts or the state of the repressed thoughts in society. So when I go through it, that's usually what I'm looking for. I want to say, like, okay, what are people thinking right now that they cannot say? And then I use that to cultivate my comprehension. And it's very funny to me because I'll bring these things out that I have a pretty good idea. Everyone's thinking. There are a lot of people's thinking right now. Sometimes they're new to me. Sometimes they're not. And then we play a game of who will be outraged by the thing that we all believe. And then, we can talk about that. There's a few examples even this week of such a response. It's very funny because that gets into a wider discussion on the role that society plays in regulating the thought space. And I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to bring here, but I find that stuff fascinating because it's decentralization. Like decentralized regulations, I don't know that people understand the depth of this field. They think it's new, and it's not. What's new is the medium, and that's great, and that's important. But the science, man, it's gone down forever. I guess the old decentralization is the oldest science in the book. People think that like we always had government that sat at the top of things and told us what to do. No. It used to be that society regulated itself generally badly, but not entirely badly. And there's all kinds of stuff in between the spectrum on how society manages these risks. And so, like, what you can say in public is very much a matter of decentralized regulations. Okay, so not related at all to the ERC20 token. So, like Bitcoin Jake, I don't know how you can speak with like some degree of objectivity in like the dictionary sense about BTCC. That's kind of the problem, is that like there's no notion of official. I find it sad, Jake. Like we can present ignorance of the lack of officialness, and we can carry that to any degree of irony you'd like. But the truth, realness, what's real, is that the BTCC brand has been desecrated. That there's no sanctity there, and that everyone can be forgiven for disregarding it in full. And I find that sad. I just find it sad. So what happened to blockchain? Blockchain used to have like a value in terms of the social regulations. We at one point, it was a while back in 2010, 2011, really, really old time ago. But maybe 2011, let's say. 2010 is a little bit before me. So 2011, 2012, we used to protect the blockchain brand, and invaders came and they systematically removed all sanctity from the word blockchain. Until now, it means everything. There's nothing that blockchain seemingly can't mean, and that'll happen to Bitcoin if it's not protected. And I don't, it's presumably anybody who invests in Bitcoin would care, but seemingly the prison politics are preventing them from doing so. Whatevs. Let's see what we got here. Recorded, rebranding, great point. You were tired of the block size debate in 2016. Yeah. So the thing about the block size debate, moderator, if that's who you are, I don't even know. It was very much like an interface. We have like these rifts that open up between groups, and in that rift, like in this Overton window, we start to tackle all kinds of things. So like, if I drew a diagram, it would probably help. It's fairly concrete in my head. But you've got a demographic in Bitcoin that is this. You've got a demographic in Bitcoin that is this. And they're starting to bicker, and they haven't formed sides yet. And they're kind of like all mixed together in this mush. And then like, boom, something catches on fire. And then that hole starts to widen, and people start to go on other sides of that hole as it widens. So that's what happened with the block size, is that you had the ability to question, in my estimation, the leadership of Bitcoin for the first time. And that was really before the digital rock thing got to be as literal as I see it now. And which is weird, because the response from the non-BCH side was to literalize this as a rock. The response to the BCH side was its own thing. But in the center of it was this contention of block size that was effectively deregulated by the audience at that point, which is weird. You see these things open up every once in a while. I see them more so than most people because I spend a lot of time on it. But like all of a sudden, I never really have good answers as to why, other than like a few things will line up news-wise. These power vacuums will open up. The public will now tolerate a discourse, and politicians will come in to create meaning and to basically assure the audience some truth or another, and then that's where the fight begins, and it either grows or it shrinks from there. It's very organic, and it's a lot of fun. It's very exciting, I think. It's really a cool spot for action, and it gets weird, especially when it gets IRL. Like I saw that at some level in the presidential elections. We all did, and it was a bit dangerous and scary for a while there. Let's see what we got here. Bitcoin Jake, who the hell are you, dude? Like, what is your interest in BTCC? Like, you're here plugging it, and that's fine. I don't even mind. But like, what's your deal? Because it's a weird thing to care about. Other than, in my mind, through this weird ironic mission, which is probably actually going to be interesting if you're not just like trying to like derogate the brand. But we'll see. Can you explain postmodern condition to illiterate or 5-year-old? Yeah. So UMS15 wants me to explain the postmodern condition to a illiterate or a 5-year-old. So I'm not an expert on this, okay? And for those that are, I apologize. But here's my best explanation. Society goes through these revolutions. We have the Industrial Revolution. We had the Modernist Revolution. We now have the Postmodernist Revolution. If not revolution, then certainly eras. And the postmodern condition is probably a reflection of mass consumption of information, such as television, perhaps radio, but certainly television, and then especially internet, in the minds of the average American and what effect it has on society. So there's a lot of pop postmodernism that is very rooted even in like very legitimate manifestations of postmodernism, but they can be a little bit distracted. There are themes to postmodernism, such as not having a grand narrative. We used to, in America, have these grand narratives, such as like the fight against communism, or the fight to put a man on the moon. And in the postmodern era, which is basically towards the tail end of that, there isn't a grand narrative anymore. And having lost that, then you effectively have multiple personalities that you wear without refrain on members of society. So it used to be, I'm told, that the relationship that you had with your neighbors in a neighborhood was fairly consistent, that your identity in public was more or less homogenous within that group because it was small and there wasn't a lot of outside information. But now you grow up in an era where you have all of these cultures coming at you through television and through the internet. And as a result, you have this very multifaceted personality such that you present oftentimes wildly different personalities to your parents versus your grandparents, or to your boss, or your friends from high school, or your friends today, or your neighbors. And so what ends up happening in the postmodern condition is that you effectively have multiple personalities. These personalities you switch through without even having a cognizance. Now that you've heard this, you might have a cognizance of it. But for many citizens, they don't have a cognizance of this. And they will switch between moralities. They will switch between personalities without refrain. And in this way, it starts to resemble a form of schizophrenia, in that what is real and what is not real becomes very tenuous in the mind of the postmodern man, which is all of us, really. You can't really exempt yourself from that. There's significantly more to it. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's a shame because there are a number of people who want to just will this away, and I get that. But their way of willing it away is to reject nuance and present ignorance, and to will ignorance on the subject matter. And so what ends up happening then is that if you have knowledge on the subject, you end up being the stigmatized man, which is a shame, again, because having knowledge on it is probably the way that you would remove the vulgarities associated with it, if they exist. But in the sort of like witch hunting culture that we have right now, merely possessing the knowledge makes you stigmatized, which is, it's really kind of weird. I don't know how that happened. Felix notices the background. It is very innocent. It was intentionally ignorant, innocent. And there you go. Little background there. And I chose it because I like the Dixieland theme, because it's morally hazardous and it presents innocently. Glad you noticed. I had the same idea for BTC and finally looked it up when it was only 18 hours old. I heart Bitcoin Core because they show how inconsiderate and incompetent Veer is. So, okay, here's the thing. I don't share the Veer hate at all. In fact, he's coming on my show on Monday. I rather like Veer. I think Veer is a leader, and I understand. Here's the thing, Bitcoin Jake. You gotta do some serious soul searching. I'll tell you why. There's a vacuum of leadership that opened up in Bitcoin. The prison politics, as it was, and as it currently is quite certainly an occlusion of leadership. We have shot callers. I don't want to name them, but they're very obviously shot callers. These shot callers, you cannot tell anybody they have rank, because if you do, you will be kicked out of the group, or you will be otherwise shamed, or of some lesser hierarchical status. So you must, as it currently exists, you must promote ignorance of leadership if you want to yourself achieve any degree of power on the hierarchy in the Bitcoin core community. Roger Ver didn't sign up for that. He didn't sign up for the prison politics, and I get that. Now, I don't think that he did an exemplary job or a perfect job, but I think he did a very good job at the time of navigating those waters. So if you think that Roger Ver is a problem, what you have to say is, well, why did my leaders give him the power vacuum to begin with? And what I recognize is that as soon as you ask that question, you are no longer you are no longer a member of the Bitcoin Core camp, because you violated the prison politics rules. Snitches get stitches, and all of that. The shot callers will have you taken care of. So I think Ver rejected that. I understand why Ver rejected that. I don't think he would have phrased it in those terms. That's how I would phrase it. And the rejection of hierarchy is in fact a promotion of ignorance, and I don't think that that is a viable strategy. If you think that Ver is the problem, he has appropriated your culture, you're probably right in the sense that he appropriated your culture, but you're wrong in the sense that your culture wasn't ripe for invasion. So it's, for me, in a lot of ways, it's very political, okay? And I don't know the cryptocurrency community well, but we have these things in society. So like you take like traditional cases of cultural appropriation, which is like the Native Americans. Who is at fault? Are the Americans at fault? Or the decentralized group of people that would eventually call themselves Americans, are they at fault for coming into the land and taking it from the Indians? Or are the Indians at fault for not inventing boomsticks? And I don't know that the answer is so clear. I think that if you don't give your land back to the Native Americans in today's age, then you probably believe, by way of utterance or otherwise, that the tort was on the Native Americans for not inventing the boomstick. So that probably is what's reasonable. Now, in Bitcoin, however, people don't seem to do that. Rather than blame their leaders, they blame the invading boomstick owners, which may or may not be Roger Ver, but ultimately would be, I would think, if we were to believe the literature on political science. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know our cryptocurrency, what the rules are here. I want to respect them. I don't know if I'm part of the problem, but these are some of the things. So yeah, I can do monologue stuff. I can bring up topics. I can answer topics. You guys can promote this on Twitter if you want to hear more. There's so many people running their mouth on Twitter, and then you ask them, what's a boomstick? Good question. A boomstick is generally a tube, a metal tube, yay big. There usually is a wooden component at the bottom, a flintlock, and a trigger, and you put these little pellets at the end, usually made of lead with gunpowder at the end, and you stick them in the boomstick, and you pack it in, and then you point it at the human you wish to extinguish, and then you press the button, and they're gone. That's a boomstick. Or where else were we? You can be forgiven for not knowing that. I don't know where the reference comes from, but I find it very funny myself. Maybe I have a sick sense of humor. I'm told that I do. Yeah, these people run their mouths on Twitter, and like they just fucking they won't. It's very frustrating because they oh, look at that. Here, I'm retweeting this event here. They never have like the ability to like articulate their thoughts. They just label. The cryptocurrency community needs to learn labeling theory as a general rule. I'd say there's a lot of knowledge there. Like if you know a little bit about labeling theory, you can really navigate complex social waters with a lot of ease. And I'm glad I undertook it because it's not even that much hard. It's not very hard. You realize that a lot of humans, like their function is to label deviants. That is what their function is in the apparatus. Haters are those people, and as you start to realize what function labeling is in a sociological sense, it becomes like a very easy thing to navigate. That's all I can tell you. You got to look through it. I give you a labeling theory lesson today. Is the Bitcoin narrative strong enough to persist in this postmodern world? Isn't the lack of narrative also the reason for so many clones? Great question. I don't know. I will say that like people are very quick to dismiss the lessons that they don't want to learn. So like the lesson from the Ethereum flippening for me is that this is entirely a matter of liquidity, meaning the value of the meme is its liquidity. The liquidity that it produces is its value. And almost all of these assets are liquidity games right now. And that's not necessarily bad, but the question is the digital gold meme of enough liquidity in the modern era to sustain its rank? And that's, I think, what we're betting on in these markets is roughly how good these memes are. I know they're memes because they don't actually produce products or services, and capital inflow has generally been entirely limited to speculation. So when I look at like CoinMarketCap here, let's look at some of the memes we have. It's very postmodern. And that's not necessarily bad because like even the dollar is very meme-ish, if not exceedingly meme-ish. It's like something that you gotta ground yourself. Very easy to fly off the handle. Like, these are all fucking memes. And like, yeah, it's true, but so is a lot of things that we just accept in society. Right. So there's obviously the Bitcoin digital gold meme at the top. Ethereum is the smart contract meme. I've never found myself compelled to enjoy the smart contract meme. I've done a video on this. I don't see any value in like smart contracts as a general rule. Multi-sig, yes. There's a lot of value in multi-sig. I'm very open to touring incomplete smart contracts. I think there's a lot of potential there. But I think what we've seen is that as soon as you make it Turing complete, it becomes an entirely manifestation of incumbent systems. Meaning you end up with these like escape hatches and these like these completely undecentralized or like non-blockchain requirements that the system then imposes. And then it begs the question, well, what do we do here? Like, why don't we just use the Amazon blockchain, the AWS blockchain? It would have done it better. Nonetheless, it's very evident that Ethereum found its footing in the IPO simulation. And as such, I think it is, whether or not it is even a smart contract meme now is arguable, because it may just be the meme of IPO simulacrums, and that's fine. Ripple is a hilarious meme to me because it is the regulated blockchain meme, which it may not actually even be. It may actually be the most illegal because of its sort of proximity to regulators and quote unquote centralization and authority. Nonetheless, the meme, when you purchase it, is packaged and is presented as being a meme that banks believe in. Then there's the Bitcoin Cash meme, which is effectively a Bitcoin variant. We can talk about that at length or not. I'm going to choose the latter. The EOS meme I'm actually really fond of. I like the EOS meme. The thing about the EOS meme is that I don't know how valuable the meme is, and so the valuations are a little frightening to me. But I like the meme itself. The EOS meme is effectively that of governance of Ethereum 2.0, which in my mind works, because if you're gonna embrace the smart contract meme, then you have to embrace the human element. And whereas Ethereum has very reluctantly done that, and even hilariously done that, it seems to me like you get a fresh reboot in EOS. EOS just tells you right off the bat, like, this is a government, and they're dudes, and we have like rules, and we're gonna do what we want as a society. And so, like, if that's the immigration requirements to the system, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I will say, like, some of the principles there, like Thomas Cox, for example, very bright guy, very, very bright guy. So the team you're investing in, you know, I don't know that they're a good one, but by blockchain standards, I think they're a good one. And there's a degree of honesty to EOS, I'm going to say. There's a degree of dishonesty to all of these projects. I get that. But the degree of honesty in EOS is that, like, yeah, we are human beings doing human being things. And we have some deference to government. It may be a simulation of government, and I may okay with that, because I think government is itself a simulation IRL. So, like, that could be fine. Then there's the Stellar project, which is kind of another one that's beyond me, really. I think there's just, I don't even know what to tell you about the Stellar meme, other than it's like the graceful ripple. I don't know what the hell the Stellar meme is. So that's actually, I should consider what the Stellar meme is. Litecoin, the meme, Litecoin has had this hilarious presentation. It is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. So if you believe that Bitcoin is a rock, then you can believe that Litecoin is one also, albeit not as good. That being said, I actually see it as being a very valuable testnet. So, you know, call me cynical, call me, you know, a prick, but I think that Litecoin is a better testnet than almost any other testnet out there. You know, which of these products are just testnets for Bitcoin is arguable. Some people will say that Bitcoin Cash is a better testnet, but I don't think it is. I think that Litecoin is a better testnet than Bitcoin Cash. Not that Bitcoin Cash isn't of value. I just think that as a meme, the testnet component is probably less applicable, or at least less valid as applied to Bitcoin Cash, as opposed to Litecoin. Tether is a number 8, which might be just the funniest thing that's ever happened in my entire life. I don't know if we want to talk about Tether. It's a dangerous subject. But nonetheless, the market cap of the Tether is at number 8. God, that's a really funny subject. We're not going to talk about it. Cardano as a meme is weird, because that was the originally the John, what the hell is his name? He's in the show. Charles Hoskinson's gambling meme. I don't know what it is now. It's gone through a few iterations that I have to confess I haven't kept up with. So this is very much like Stellar in my mind, and that the meme component is still in flux. And yeah, I don't know what the hell Cardano does, if not everything. But it started off with a gambling component, that it was the gambling meme, and they were going to achieve faith amongst all of the gambling houses in their sort of smart contract kind of thing that would facilitate gambling. So now I don't know what it is, other than cures what ails you kind of thing, which maybe is fine. I have no doubt that its presentation is great if it's in the top 10. And then lastly, a project very dear to my heart, Monero. I like Monero. Monero is, in my mind, the privacy meme, which I think is a good meme. I really do. I don't see it getting as much respect as it should, but I accept that markets are probably as efficient as they can be in this low volume world that we have in crypto. And it may be that Monero is a bad meme because the regulatory threats are higher on account of the fungibility, and I accept that. Nonetheless, I like the community of Monero very much. So that is a meme that's very close to my heart. That being said, do not buy it. It's a scam. And I can't be blamed if you do, because I gave you that advice. Don't buy it. Don't buy Monero. So is the Bitcoin narrative strong enough to persist in this postmodern world? You know, I gave you the top memes, and when you look at those memes, I think the digital gold meme is probably a pretty strong one out of that group. I think that you will probably see a decent amount of faith in gold rocks online. You might want to consider that, like, as a store of value, one way of looking at these is, do I believe this ignorance will prevail? And I don't mean ignorance even in a pejorative sense, because like we look at like religions, and ignorance is in fact a significant component of what they offer. It's not to be said that the people who follow religions are ignorant, but the morals that they present are these balances between truth and the unknown. And so this like very well calibrated machinery that is the religion has probably offered humans a great compromise in terms of like what you can believe and what you can't believe. So it may be that when you invest in these things, in Bitcoin and such, that you're investing in ignorance, and which ignorance will prevail. If that's the case, and frankly, all markets kind of are like that. You know, they're like Tesla or even Amazon or some of these big like tech companies. It's like, well, are people going to continue to believe that Teslas are the future? And like that is the unknown, and that is risk. And so maybe that is ignorance, and like that's fine. But I think that the digital rock ignorance is probably strong. And I say that too because like the CFTC is still thinking that they might regulate this space, which would be a great thing for the digital rock meme, because that will reify, we can talk about that too, reification, that will reify the belief that this is a rock. And that would be a very positive belief if you've invested in Bitcoin, I think. So I think so. I think too, like, the first mover advantage is non-trivial. I think it can be displaced. I don't think that it is inevitable that Bitcoin will succeed, but I think that it's a very good bet. I think that betting on the ignorance of perhaps the rocks and the first mover advantage being of paramount importance, that's a good bet. I do. Isn't the lack of narrative also the reason for so many clones? Absolutely. It's 100% the reason why we have so many problems with Bitcoin identity. You'll notice that like so many problems are caused by the prison politics system. We're not allowed to talk about things because like if Bitcoin had the ability to regulate with boomsticks, it would be a fantastic way to regulate. But since we don't have boomsticks, people will just drop out of the hierarchy, as Roger Ver did, and then have a discussion outside of the enforcement mechanism. So there are easy solutions to the problem, and we'll see if Bitcoin Core or anybody else in Bitcoin takes it up. But I mean, currently Roger Ver's the only one who's even taken that on. So like it's in his court really at the moment. Success is the ability to meme. Yes, success is definitely the ability to meme. And you see this in traditional markets as well. I don't think that's even a crypto thing. With crypto, it's taken to the nth degree, but that's okay. Cardano is a weird meme. Is TRX the porta potty meme? I don't know. It's a good question. Is the real gold meme dying and being replaced? Good question. So society is coming to terms with specie in many forms. And like I know this because even the dictionaries are having this problem. So like I think I don't know if I did this on the show the other day or not. If not, I did on Twitter. So like let's take a quick look here. Let me see if I remember right. So territory is any tract of land, region, or district. So let's look up district. District, a division of territory. So you can see that the two signs point to each other. It's not exclusive, I get it, but a district is a territory is a district. But what the fuck is this then? And we know it through some degree of precision, but because there is this confusion and the signs are pointing at each other, it tells me that the dictionaries are looking upon us to regulate this for us. This is how decentralization regulates itself. So look at this. WAS's reputation is getting thrown into their, oh man, you're going to securitize the WAS. In any case, right. So the signs are pointing to each other. And that means that we have the ability, there's a power vacuum there, to close the signs pointing at each other. What I wanted to do is to know if a district or territory requires specie, and I don't think anybody knows. I'm pretty sure that they don't require specie. And so it seems to me that if we were coordinated as a community, what we would do is we would fight to remove specie requirements in the dictionary. And in doing so, we would reify blockchain. Reification is a theme of mine right now. If you search for it, you will probably find danger. Let's see what happens if we do. Reification. Okay, good. Yeah, right. So there's like this sort of dangerous element to reification, which I find, very compelling. But there's also like a multidisciplinary approach to it. Reification is making something real, bringing something into being, or making something concrete. And blockchain is all about that. I don't see any shame in embracing that. There are some that will tell us that it is Marxist, and maybe it is. I have no idea. But what I do know is that there is a lot of statistical notions of reification that we should probably be compelled to. Certainly linguistical terms, which again, harkens to our last example of dictionary-based reification schemes. Yeah, and psychology, if not more. Computer science. It's a wonderful, wonderful definition of reification. So yeah, so as a society, we are having this battle now for specie, and that's at the heart, I think, of what we're going to end up doing with gold as a meme. Because here's the thing about gold you got to consider: it's not actually rare. It's only rare right now. People want it to be like an inevitable thing, but like if we start to mine the asteroids, we're gonna have gold everywhere. So it's really no different than the stone rocks of that island, where like you had a landlocked tribe, and so like they just use like concrete, which was rare to them. So gold, it doesn't have the staying power in the modern era that I would imagine you would want if you are of the comprehension of the inevitable. But I don't know that Bitcoin does either sometimes, That being said, I think that regulations will probably reify this to the nth degree, and people hate hearing that. But I think it's absurd to not appreciate that. And to the degree that we regulate this stuff is the degree to which it will become real. So I don't see that millennials have the respect for IRL rocks that their parents did. I don't know that I'm in touch, but I don't see jewelry as being as gold oriented in the investment community. Maybe in the non-investment community that still is a thing. In the investment community, I don't know. So yeah, I would think the real gold meme is probably dying. But if you wanted to, I'm pretty sure if you wanted to short postmodernism, you would buy real gold, IRL gold. In fact, we shouldn't call it real gold if we're in this space. We should just call it gold with specie. That's probably what we should do. We should fight it that way. Words, man. People are buying words. They are absolutely invested in words. Maybe that's always been the case, but it's especially true now. Trump is a meme machine. You damn right he is. That guy is just fucking great at it. I could talk about him for a long time. I've never seen the country so preoccupied with a president before. Maybe it's my circles, granted, but I turn on the news and it's just like the guy's killing it. He's just killing it on the meme markets constantly. Yeah, lol at the ad. Agreed, Brim. What's the hedge for digital value? Surely it's specie. Yeah, I mean, the hedge for digital value. See, here's the thing: is that like companies aren't real either, in the sense that they only exist in our minds. And once you regulate it, you now have the power of the state that ensures the reification, and now you can hold individuals accountable based on their social distance from the words. And so I actually think that the S&P 500 is probably, the best hedge for digital value. Granted, it's the best hedge for a lot of things. But that's probably what I would say. That being said, maybe gold is, people talk about gaining, losing territory in argument pretty naturally. I think so. I'm not sure I understand the reference there. Okay, those are easy questions. I don't know the cryptocurrency community that well. I mean, it seems like it's a place a lot of people show up, and like I go to enough conferences and I talk to enough people to where I can probably guess like a lot of the mentality there. And not that it's bad. There's probably a lot of hope. Look at the headlines here. Let's see. So like a lot of Venezuela talk. Venezuela is obviously a poster child right now for mismanaged fiat. Useful. Need those. Bitcoin is trading surprisingly well after another round of SEC rejections. Gosh, man, you know, the SEC ETF stuff is like a deliverance. It's our day of reckoning. It's Judgment Day. I don't know how much I even like it being accepted because I could just see the price crashing. Like if the SEC like announced the ETF, I could just see everybody like having bought on the rumor and sold on the news at this point. I don't know that it will be our day of like delivery. It might be. I would like for it to be. But I could totally see it just like all these people expecting redemption and then it just goes to the potato like immediately because of this of this hope now being removed from the investment thesis. It would actually be very funny. Like I don't think people would like it because they're gonna lose money and all. But I see the humor in that. All right. What else we got here? We're gonna lose money and all. Whoop. Going down. All right. These SEC rejections are actually veiled, what's the word? Commentaries, I think, on the tether problem. And I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that, so I'll just leave it at that. But it's true that we probably need to deal with that before we can get an ETF. And even after, it doesn't mean we're guaranteed. It just means that it's another round of negotiations. What else do we have here? All right, Andreas does Andreas things. And oh god, William Bugayar, man. Oh yeah, this is great. See, the ICO is an emulation of an IPO. It is a simulation of the IPO. We have these in the space, and William Bugayar is like the poster child of the IPO simulation. To me, that makes him absurdist, like comical even. And I don't know who the people are that don't see that, but I can guess who they are. It's funny because you come into this space and then like you need an interface as a human with which to engage in the space. And what, to his credit, what William did, it might have been Joe Lubin, but between the two of them, and you know what, it wasn't his credit. It was Joe Lubin who did it. But Bugayar jumped on the train early. What they did was they defined an interface by which the humans can interact with blockchain. And that interface was as a hearkening to the mid-90s .com era. They said to the humans, okay, what's going on here, I will give you clarity, is IPO mania. And then the humans acted in kind. So like there was like that ICO conference that like Bugayar had, and it was almost like comical. Everybody wanted to get in to the conference so they could buy the ICO. And the emulation that was being done was based on their mental assessment of how IPOs and stocks work. But we know it's not stocks and IPOs. Like we know it's different. And there's a bunch of reasons that you can get into for that. Nonetheless, the simulation has mostly run its course, I think. There's a few, these simulations occur in the space where somebody finds like a meaty one and then everyone acts a role by way of hope and optimism. And that form of interaction has been de-risked. You can act that way with impunity in the crowd because it is a safe way to present yourself. And it's very funny to me because not that I'm innocent, but I try not to get too swept up into the emulations. But what is immoral is generally to point out the absurdity that some individuals are taking the analogy to. And that's why they actually emulate in that capacities, because that's what's less risky. They come into it with a great degree of ignorance, which is acceptable. That's even reasonable. But then in order to achieve a greater spot in the system, they then shame those who would denigrate their performance. Anyways, what's up, chats with Decentralised? I'm inclined to go into monologue. I don't know. It's like a low volume room here. What's the demographics like on? We see the stats on our cryptocurrency, because a lot of people just went gonzo in 17, and then the herd has kind of moved on, I think. Not that it makes this bad. I actually think that once the herd leaves is when like the action starts. But holy shit, you actually have 9,000 online. Okay, so there's a lot of people. Holy crap, man. Let's see if I can see our cryptocurrency stats. Our cryptocurrency stats. Hold on, I'll do it with you guys here. Reddit stats. Our cryptocurrency. Subreddit stats. There you go. Redditmetrics.com and our cryptocurrency. That's what we got here. Yeah, okay, perfect. So that's kind of what I would have expected. Let me zoom in so we can look at that a little bit deeper. No, doesn't appear to be. Anyway, that's okay. So this when the herd was at its peak right here. What do we have? Basically at the start of 2018. And then a massive, seemingly massive decline from 24,000. What is the number here? That's the subscriber growth. So that's a measure of like standard deviation then. So it doesn't mean that those people dropped off. It just means that they joined. Did I say standard deviation? Derivative, excuse me. All right, let's go back here. Oh, perfect. We got a... Okay, let's see a screenshot here. Perfect, even better. Okay, bring this on over to my... It's hot in Florida today. Let me tell you, man. Perfect. Uniques by month, page rep. Perfect. Yeah, okay, so that kind of correlates with what we just saw prior. That's interesting. It shows the new Reddit tick up there. That's a lot of uniques. 7 million-ish uniques, 6.5 million-ish uniques in January. I'm very curious to see if we get another uptick this season. Because we haven't always, but there is a correlation, I think. Somebody should look into that. On like Christmas bonus money going into the market. It doesn't mean that that'll persist. But it would be interesting to see to what degree it's cyclical. Now, if you look at the last graph, we couldn't really zoom in. So I don't know if we can get the 2017 charts just to see if there's a similar bump there in December. And a similar taping off. Look at the mobile components here too. It's kind of interesting. I kind of like denigrate the mobile users. I feel like they're like lesser internet denizens. I don't know if you guys do that too. It's not that they are. It's just that their concentration is more fleeting. They need a lower karma points requirement because they're too scared of trolls. Man, this trolling phenomenon is such a fucking strange thing to me. We play. This is kind of part of my platform now. If you guys don't know it, you probably do. We play this game of chess. Chess is a game that is exactly like chess, except that nobody knows the rules. That's how you play chess. And the trolls, if you will, are guilty of not knowing the rules of chess, seemingly. And the outrage over the behavior of those who don't know the rules, I find to be hilarious because invariably the people who are outraged themselves don't know the rules. And I had one of those experiences today regarding pronoun use, where somebody was outraged over my expression of friction over pronouns, and I then asked some very basic questions over the rules, at which point they summarily blocked me. And so it may be that what trolls are the people who are comfortable with their ignorance, and that may be shameful behavior. Actually, I'd be very curious to know. I don't know if that's a statement of the modern time or not. I feel like it didn't used to be that way. We all have like the stigmas in society now are like so obtuse sometimes that I just can't help but to laugh. And I know that they're obtuse even because people won't explore nuance. So like if somebody doesn't explore nuance with you, then you know they don't understand the subject. And it's okay to not have answers, but like they don't want to present that way. So instead they present intolerance, which I find to be a little bit, dishonest. But I will humor them because it seems like that's how they present. And then that usually ends up going south very fast. But my conscience is clean. Before Google, it was easy to bluff knowledge. You are absolutely right. Man, oh man. So many people are just hanging on by a thread. Like they don't know what the hell's going on and they're scared that everyone's going to like find out. And maybe that's my insensitivity. Maybe the irony is that in fact I don't have the ignorance that I think I have. And I should be more compassionate about those that do. But I just I don't like these societies that are pursuing ignorance as a virtue. I see that. Like in Bitcoin, it's getting real bad. Where like if you know a thing, you are guilty of being knowledgeable, and that would be the tort. That does not seem healthy to me at all, and I'm very disappointed by that. But I'm watching that tick up. Somebody, like the other day, I made a notional reference to like community health, and somebody was denigrating the reference, and it's like, no, the community health is like an actual science and everything. And then I pointed it out, and then that person went away. But it's amazing to me the level of assumption that I see in the communities, the cryptocurrency communities, over malintent. Almost any deviation whatsoever, if you explore a thought out of pure constructive innocence, you are an agent of evil, and you should be summarily rejected. And that is crazy to me. It's very Lord of the Flies-ish. It's very, the problem I always have is that like these things are easy to deal with. It's just that I don't know how much I want to join people in the interface, Like I was debating whether or not to make a shill account that would just get like super high upvotes on our Bitcoin. And the shill account would effectively be comporting with all of the rules that are unspoken in the game of Bitcoin Shineth. But then I was like, I don't have the time right now. But then B, I was like, I don't know what does that say? That I can contrive an interface to succeed in a system that is effectively a feedback loop. That's all it's going to prove. And maybe I'm the idiot and I should do that. And I see some personalities in the space that are absolutely killing it with that interface. But I just don't feel like it's where I belong. It's also just not fun, if I had to be honest. It becomes a work to basically, deal with the greatest fools. And I don't think that that's reasonable for anybody to strive towards. And I don't think that anybody should want that. Seems a little scammy, frankly. Hey, what's up, Viking Progress? We can absolutely get esoteric. I'm glad you're here. Esoteria is fun. And nuance, man. Nuance is fun. Nothing more immoral than nuance in the modern world, and I love that. Love that. I had fucking Giacomo on Twitter tell me, real men, let's see if I can find this tweet. Assuming he didn't block me. Real men don't do nuance. He doesn't understand how the real card works or the we card works yet. And I actually admire him for trying. From Giacomo to Derose, he would have me believe that he speaks on behalf of all men. And I do that. I speak on behalf of huge swaths of the population, but I know how the game is played. There's a very specific interface that you must understand. And he's trying it out, and he'll learn. I'd even be inclined to teach him. It's a good skill to have. To Derose, yeah. Okay, if according to Giacomo, a bunch of things. I was discussing the outrages relating to commerce in the Bitcoin community. If you haven't noticed, our cryptocurrency, our Bitcoin is very much like a communist thing these days. And if you make money, that is a foul. In any case, it culminates in his assessment that if you start with nuances, you end up with stuff like gold wing eyebrows or epilation, and real men don't do those things. So I guess the takeaway for him was that nuance is evil, which is not what I believe. And that is a strange belief to cultivate. I'm surprised anybody wants that belief. Oh no, Patrick, you retracted your message, but the YouTube blockchain won't lie. People will know you wanted to get esoteric. Well, what else we got? Any questions? Did I answer everything? Let's see if anyone's got any questions on Twitter here. Ooh. There is a vote for the Crypto Clown of 2018, where I am listed alongside Vinny Lingham, Craig Wright, Ran Nooner, Nicolas Maduro. This is a great, good pick. And Edmund Gunsar. So I'm hoping to win. I don't think that I'm anywhere close to winning, and that's a shame on me. What is your opinion of Craig's new fork and drama there? I don't get Craig Wright, man. That he likes my tweets and stuff. The whole Craig Wright phenomenon is such a clusterfuck. I've been following this guy since even like day one, if not a little bit sooner. And I had if you go through the old BU catalog, we staked out at one episode. We staked out the brother of David Kleiman, Craig Wright's partner here in West Palm Beach. We talked to him and people around him and his girlfriend even, and like I did a whole investigation on the thing. Craig Wright is somebody who clearly is a confidence man, a flim-flam man. He's the monorail type of guy from the Simpsons episode. And I think that the scam he's running is in presenting himself as Satoshi to old-timey Bitcoiners. I don't want to name him by name. And I think this is rumor. This is just navel gazing. This is a collection of my thoughts. But there's no necessarily any truth behind it. So I guess what he did was he presented himself as Satoshi to old-timey Bitcoiners. He then convinced them something along these lines that he wanted to spend his original coins, but he couldn't without destroying the Bitcoin price. So won't you please lend me some Bitcoin, and that way I can do what I need, and your investment will be good. So I think this week he went to this old Bitcoiners with, and then I think they invested, and now after a lot of time, they've come to some degree of opinion that he is real, because I guess they lost a bunch of money with him, or they let him borrow a bunch of money. And so he's kind of kept around, I think, because he has these sort of social ties to old-timey Bitcoiners. But the whole thing is very bizarre. And I don't know why he's around. I don't know who invites him. The gall that it takes to present yourself as a historic figure is just incredible. And he goes into these rooms and he does it, and it's unfathomable to me that anybody can do it for as long as he's done. The whole thing's just bizarre. It's very Bitcoin. Who the hell knows what's really going on there? But it's clear that he needs money, so like that should be considered. And I guess the way he chose to create credibility was in the way that he did, and now he needs more money. I think he's still on the run in Australia. I know that he's involved in court proceedings here in Florida. So I'm guessing this is his scheme. Yet another Hail Mary pass at making money, amongst many others. And he's just an incorrigible kind of guy. His sort of social capital is very loose with him. He doesn't seem to care. And in Bitcoin, he found a perfect medium where people don't seem to care. Quite frankly, I see a lot of people in our cryptocurrency that would be probably very happy to, deal with somebody like Craig Wright, if not him exactly. So like, it's a good place for him to run a scam. And I would even encourage him to do it at this point. Like, I don't want my name attached. My social capital is more important to me than his is, but I want to see the drama, because that'll be hilarious. Whatever happens there is going to be good. It's going to be fun. My friend Matthew drinks bathwater and showers in the sink. Can you give me advice? Maybe your friend Matthew's a cat, because my friend Sketchball does these things, and he's a cat. Does your friend Matthew also shed hair everywhere in the house, even in places that you cannot possibly fathom, such as inside of your toothpaste? You squeeze out cat hairs along with your toothpaste, because I do, and I have no idea how my cat does that. Some Houdini shit. It's fucking weird. Does anyone care about immutability anymore? Great question. I think the immutability meme is mostly done. Bitcoin does have that in its sort of like bylaws, that it is immutable. Whether or not that's true is very arguable. But I think that some people do, like The Economist obviously does, or did. And I think see, here's the thing about immutability is it's like this virtue that we can point at. And so when regulators say like, well, why should we label this? And you can be like, well, it makes everything immutable. And everybody wants immutable because immutable is the thing that makes regulations regulate. And it doesn't have to really make sense, obviously. It's just to be confusing enough to where like regulators will just be like, oh yeah, okay, that's a virtue. And so it may be that nobody cares other than for the regulatory conveniences. But that is a good reason to care. So I don't. It's a very multifaceted question. It's good to ask. I would say that people do care, and it's not only that people do care. It's that probably important people care. Not that the care is important, but the people who have jurisdiction and power have it. So it should probably be espoused for that reason. You know, even if you're only talking to like 1/100% of the population, it's a powerful 1/100%. And I did answer Mark Irwin's question. His friend Matthew's a cat. All right, what do you have here about? He's human. He's 15 years old. Oh, well, that's weird. He may have species dysphoria. That could be what's going on, where he believes himself to not be human. There's a few forms of this dysphoria. I think species dysphoria is probably better than some of the alternatives. And yeah, he probably needs some help with that, but I think that help will yield ultimately promising results. He may turn into a fully functioning furry one day. So this does not have to be a debilitating condition in his life. He may find an outlet for it that remediates it and makes it whole. This BitMEX rabbit hole opening up. I don't think I know enough about the BitMEX rabbit hole. Are we talking about like the fucking leverage craziness or the shorts? Give me the background on BitMEX, because I don't follow the trading side as much. Everything we argue about in this space is mostly conjecture and other nuances. Well, I mean, you know what? I agree. But that's like all spaces. You know, there are things we don't talk about in this space. No, I would have said, you know, cat hair, but obviously now we do. So maybe you're right. Yeah, I mean, society fights for ignorance, if you haven't noticed. It's very weird to me because I wasn't raised that way. And I don't know if it's I'm getting older or if I was in a bubble or if society's changed, all of which are probably true. But in society, you will generally find that people are outraged over a rule to Chinese that you don't know. And they would further argue that you should not know it and nobody should know it. And that's generally at the root of most forms of public contention, is that you have expressed knowledge of a thing you're not supposed to know. Not always, but often, which is very interesting to me. And I kind of get it because like a moral is generally a balance of ignorance for peace. So the belief would be that if you know this thing, that peace would be disturbed in society. So like Tether, for example, don't want to talk about it. We have to keep ignorance about Tether because if we developed knowledge there, it would be of great outrage. It would be of risk. You would disrupt the peace. So I guess we have to be sensitive of these things. The shame, of course, is that people who want to explore that thought would be prevented from doing so in mainstream outlets. But there are advantages to it too. So it's a very hard balance. You'll find this in your life. Generally, what you'll be guilty of is knowing things you should not know. And it's weird. It's very fucking weird. It took me a long time to figure that out. Maybe you all knew this, but it's new to me. Newish. Yeah. Like last 5 years adult thing. So basically everyone's trying to figure out how tons of insider trading with BitMEX. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. Well, Here's the thing. Everybody needs to decide. The scandals are certain outside regulation. Like regulations, there are conflicts of interest in every business. And regulations, when they work well, separate out the conflicts of interest in a way that promotes societal gains and also allows for principles to profit. But since we don't have regulations here, we are learning this the hard way. And again, I find that blaming the individuals who succeed in leveraging power vacuums is probably less productive than blaming the regulations that got us there. But good luck telling that to people who are fetishizing rocks and anarchy. And I would tell you to perhaps rise above the muck. I have a depiction of this that, you know, I'm going to show here. I think everybody probably needs to. I guess I have to see my Google Doc. I'm putting the time in now. So bring the image out. Here we go. This very important image right here. Very important image. I would tell you all to understand this. This explains many of the problems in a easy to comprehend form of what people are trying to do, what they think they're doing, and ideally what you should be doing. You should be at all times within sight of the ideal form and comprehend those who wish to get stuck in the muck of dicing up these things. Now, I do the latter. I dice up these things, but I try to also do it while keeping the form, and that's kind of my job. It's not so that it's not that you would keep the ideal form. It's not that you would censor those. It's that you would float above them. That's the difference. And sometimes, like, talking about the ideal form is what the floating is. So you should aspire to float above the muck. I think that when I came into this, I was not very classist at all. And that was easy in 2011 when the community was more homogenous and less decentralized. Perhaps. I don't know. Now we have people who are proud of their ignorance and are barely literate even, who believe that they deserve just as much say as we do. And I don't think that that's a healthy thing. I discourage these beliefs personally. Keep the ideal form in mind. Weaker narratives cause uncertainty, increases insecurity of people. That is true, but society rejects grand narratives in many ways. I talked about this with Xiagu this week in Monero. I think the Monero Space Force is a grand narrative worth considering. We should send a Moneran to the moon. I think that would be an excellent grand narrative personally, but again, most people, they'd reject the grand narratives these days. I don't know. I think you often conflate anarchy with disorder, right? So Patrick, we are, so the signs are pointing at themselves. We're losing history, and sort of the Baudrillard issues are like very real to me at the moment. I might change my mind by this time next year, but at the moment, so like, which anarchy are we discussing, right? A state of society without government or law may very well be the most common definition. But if we go to anarchy on Wikipedia and look at these signs here, I'm going to follow these signs. What do they tell us? Right, perfect. Disambiguation. So there's like a context of anarchy. Anarchy in international relations is a very important concept. It is real, as best I can tell. I'm fairly certain that's real, in that, well, as it says, there's no universal sovereign or worldwide government. We are, in fact, in an anarchist world. However, there is this other definition that the state and all forms of rulership are undesirable and should be abolished. So, like, the context switch is hard, and even the signs themselves are somewhat ambiguous. So, I do think that anarchy is a transitional government, in that it is an effort to reduce the hierarchy, increase entropy of the entrenched system. And so in that way, I think it is disorderly. If we consider it a stationary target, or a actual, like, state of equilibrium, then I think that's like I think that would be like this Wikipedia thing here, which is just like never manifested. So it's hard for me to the degree it's manifested. It's been very temporal and not of the ideal form of anarchy. It's just kind of like some dude who was a ruler convinced enough people on the prison yard that he, as a shot caller, that they couldn't talk about politics. I feel like the Spanish Civil War is particularly phenomenal in this respect. You can actually spend a lot of time understanding anarchy through that, or anarchy the philosophy, anarchy the meme of disorder. Yes, well, that anarchy the philosophy with the meme of disorder. Yes, these are all fair criticisms. Postmodern man has no ideal form to look forward to. He only has an ideal form to be nostalgic for. That is, I didn't think about that. Is that certainly true? Who said that? Or I mean, as certain as we can possibly be in these things. It seems very insightful. I actually find that very alluring. Very, very great suggestions from you, Patrick. How do we educate these types? I think the context was lost. Rephrase the question, please. Chats with Decentralized. Anarchy means without archy. If we all spoke Hebrew or some other older language and not English, maybe we could all come to similar answers. English is too much going on to really actually communicate for most people. I wonder about that too. We're losing meaning, and I don't know if that's bad or even unprecedented. And I don't even know to the degree that that we're losing it is unusual by English standards, but it's very obvious to me that the definitions are just these days, and it makes it hard to communicate. It makes it very, 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 very hard to communicate. And not only that, but if willful ignorance is the interface by which most people wish to communicate, then it's actually like immoral to have words with meaning, which is weird. Very, 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 very weird. I can work with these interfaces. Like the thing I always have a hard time with is that like I come at these things like trying to understand the game. Like, okay, well, what game are we playing? Okay, that's how the game is played. And then I have a very hard decision because I have to engage in the game at that point, which oftentimes like neuters the authenticity of the game. And I don't know why that's a tort, but it often is. And then I can choose not to play the game, which oftentimes also is immoral in the sense that I don't like comport with the delusion or something. It's weird because I don't mind these forms of like anti-socialization, but it's surprising to me that others don't see it this way. It's very strange. And I know that like you come into these things and like people look at you like they get it, and then they're oftentimes even embarrassed. But I don't know why that would be, because like you can look at the room and everyone's got the same fucking opinion. So it's like, okay, well, y'all thinking this, so don't look at me. I'm just the one who like didn't mind pressing the button. And maybe that's the tort. Is it like you ruined the simulation? But if we all knew it was a simulation, how bad can I feel about that? Come on, like just rehearse one more degree. How do we educate the entitled no-coiners you spoke of? Well, okay. I mean, the no-coiners are effectively ambiguous. Like they, in my experience, with people that are fairly well-educated in the finance world who are no-coiners, there is a skepticism that is warranted over the degree of commitment that we have in this community, and I share that skepticism. I see a lot of people who are just fair weather fans of crypto, and the second it gets hard, they just hit the eject button. It's like, all right, well, dude, who are you kidding? You can tell me anarchy, and then all you got to do is like one iota of like sweat equity, and you're gone. Come on. So that's one reason. So we probably, hey, Vin. Yeah, so we probably need a little more sweat equity in the game. And I'm hoping that after this bubble, people are going to realize that like the ownership that they have of these tokens is an obligation that they have, and it's not an obligation that others have. Because I think that's how decentralization works. Meaning, if you have a token, the community doesn't owe you something. You probably owe the community something, and that's the skepticism of the no coiner. The no coiner probably looks at this and says like, okay, he's got a unit of debt issued by an unknown authority. Is he going to realize that he's going to fulfill that debt or not? And some communities will. I see this, I don't even want to say the names because I don't like to shill, but I see this in a couple communities, and that's healthy. Other communities, I don't see it in. And like the ICOs, yeah, exactly, Vin. Ask not what Bitcoin can do for you, what you can do for Bitcoin. And that is very real. So the no coiners know that. And many of the Bitcoiners don't know that. And we will see when times get tough again, who starts to realize that. I think another thing that the no coiners are probably reasonable about is their apprehensions of liquidity in the space. Right now, the liquidity is very weird. I don't like to talk about Tether too much because it's so systemic and scary for people, but it's kind of a problem. Like, what do you 80% or more of the volume is held in custody of a single agency. And like the allegations that they are fractional or otherwise are even irrelevant because the point is the same. How decentralized are you when all of your volume, or the vast majority of your volume, is going between, one custodial agent and all of the exchanges? What would happen if they got a subpoena? They got hit by a bus. They were fractional. So that's another thing with the no coiners, and they're right about that. We got to figure out what that deal is. And the banking relationship that Tether has, if it's a single one, could be lost. And then what do we do? Why aren't there other people doing this kind of thing? What do they know that we don't? On and on and on and on. And those people aren't even no coiners. They're just USD coiners usually. And you can, if you consider them no coiners, I think that it's to misassess their allegiances. It's not that they're no coiners. They are just not crypto coiners, but they are fiat coiners, perhaps. If a Bitcoiner doesn't understand Bitcoiners, is he or she a Bitcoiner? So that is an excellent question, Chash with Decentralised. We need to start reeling in the brand. Blockchainers are anything and everything. Everything is a blockchain now because nobody put their foot down. Nobody said this is not a blockchain or this is not whatever. And now, that's a blockchain. This apple here, it's a blockchain. This water, blockchain. No one's going to tell me no. No one. And if we don't control immigration, we're going to have more problems. So, like, one of the things I like about one of the cryptocurrencies, I don't even want to say the name, is that, like, they take immigration fairly seriously. Like, there is a minimum height to enter. And like, it may be that we let everybody in at some point, but right now there's a recognition that we are beholden to our community, and we have to do things for our community before we can expect the community to do things for us. And that attitude I find to be helpful. Does anyone understand Bitcoin though? And then that's the other thing too, is that, like, Vin's right. It could be said that the developers probably understand Bitcoin better than anybody, but they would hide and cringe from any form of discussion on that. So the answer might be no. That's not true. People put their foot down. So here's the thing about people putting their foot down. When they do it, they act in expression of a group. And the question is, well, what group? So if they don't act in an expression of Bitcoin or of the Bitcoin devs, or of Bitcoin Core, or of anything but themselves, they are not putting their foot down in any capacity towards the defense of the word. This notion of official is real. It's real enough, at least, for humans to respect. And the lack of official lines is of a major detriment in the space. Some of the projects will say, like, yeah, this is official. And in doing so, they can then represent the brand. The problem with Bitcoin is that even though there is a very official binary, I call it the charming binary, because it is the charming leader that everyone agrees to when they download it. They hit a button. They say, I want you to be my leader. I am submitting to your authority. They download that binary. They're not creating any definition of what it is that you have. So that's where the foot needs to be put down. And people want to blame guys like Roger Ver, but it's like, well, maybe they should have just put their foot down and prevented that power vacuum to begin with. The no one listens because too much money, that's probably true as well. All right. How much time do we have? Let me put into this. Oh, an hour and a half. Jesus crap. All right. You guys, a few more questions and we'll probably tie it up. You don't have to understand a symbol. Yeah, John Spock, you don't have to understand a symbol, but you have to think you do, which is weird. So, like, you see this in America. Like, what is America? And, like, everyone thinks they know what America is, and the reality is that nobody has any fucking clue what America is. It's a country. It is a piece of land, but it has, like, 50 states, and it has, like, its territories, and it's got a bunch of shit I probably don't even know that are within the purview. There's a government, and the thing that ties it together is this word called freedom, which nobody knows what the hell that is, other than I can do whatever I want, which is completely at odds with capitalism, which is effectively the science of limiting what you can do, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing, but it seems weird because, like, it seems like you, in order to be free, you need to have a notion of where you belong, which is reasonable, but nobody seems to know that, so that's kind of weird. But you have to feel like you know what it is. That's the most important thing. And I think a lot of ways, like when we motivate ignorance, it's because we want to create the feeling of comprehension amongst those who don't have one. And we fight against the nuance so that they don't wander. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and everyone can agree. And so, like, that's kind of where, like, that comes from. I don't think that that's a very nuanced way to comprehend Bitcoin, and I don't think that will work going forward. But it worked for thus far, so we'll see. Bitcoin is like the hypothalamus of the internet. So, like, it's kind of a great analogy, I would say, Patrick. I agree. Because I think what's going on here is obviously some form of identity and identity system. And that would, I think, correlate with the hypothalamus reference. You'll notice that people are Bitcoiners as a kind. Like, that is their primary allegiance in many cases. And they have no embarrassment about that. So, like, you never saw that with, I don't know, torrents or with other, Tor or other quasi-decentralized things. Like, you weren't of the Tor or you weren't of the torrent, but people are of the Bitcoin. Like, that is their primary allegiance. So I think that, yeah, that hypothalamus thing is probably a great analogy. Do we have a blockchain without single authorities? No. Because these are ones and zeros. And that means the humans have to form their structure by committee. So there's really no way around that. Obviously, Satoshi was a single authority. He then handed it over to Marty Malmy and a few other people thereafter. But these authorities are real and needed. And there's a simple reason why you can't do without them, which is that the ignorant are generally less powerful than the specialized. Meaning, if you value illiteracy, then you would be outpowered by the specialists. The specialists know that knowledge is power, and they will control you. And you see that here in blockchain because very few people can program it. The people that can get to have inordinate sway over the network. And that's good. I think that's very good. But that means that we can't have authorities. Now, if you could figure out a way where the illiterate could be as powerful as the specialized, then we would not need authorities, is my guess. But I think that that's probably a ignoble end. Meaning, I don't think that anyone would like that system, because that system would probably require like boomsticks or something. And even still, they're gonna work. It's just gonna get that. It just doesn't work, I don't think. Well, so like nobody wants to understand Bitcoin, wants to be the leader because they know how dangerous it is. That's reasonable, but Roger Ver does. So we should respect that. Quite honestly, people don't want to hear that, but we found a man, and he's happy to do it, and we should respect that. So, like, one of the things that Bitcoin Core would tell you is just what you said, that we don't want a liability. It's like, okay, well, then you found your man. No. Okay, well, maybe there's a little more rhetoric involved there than what you're saying. So So yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably a good place to wrap it up. If any more questions come in while I eat this apple. Hey, Ben. Absolutely. The question from Vin is, wouldn't you say that the authorities leverage the illiterate in order to advance their agenda and Sybil attack the literate? That's 100% true. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, there's this like reductionist comprehension of government, I think, Vin, that is popular in libertarian circles, wherein like there's this conspiracy of sorts to oppress people, and there's a truth to it. But it's also true that like the alternative is that we oppress ourselves in weird ways. Meaning, if we don't have some degree of accountability, then what will generally happen, I think, is we will have pirates running around and FARC type organizations which stick guns into the hands of the illiterate and shoot off people's heads that disagree with them. So like, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I don't think is reasonable. Like, it's certain that there are many injustices that are committed today, even in America. I'm watching this like prison strike. It seems to me that prisoners, though incorrigible people, maybe on average, are people nonetheless, and some of the things we're probably doing there are just not reasonable. That being said, throwing out government entirely probably means that whoever has the most ammo rules the country. I don't know who that would be, but it seems like the sort of like the notion that the alternative to what we have now is utopia is just a bit overblown. I'm not very sympathetic to that. I don't think government is necessary if not sufficient. Great mantra. It works for me. And I'd like to see this movement provide a lot of that sufficiency, particularly like in, online commerce and international commerce. But throwing out the necessity of government seems unreasonable and untenable. Seems. All right. Well, that was the first our cryptocurrency Q&A. For me, I don't know the cryptocurrency community, our cryptocurrency community very well. My presumption is that they would find this very boring, or stupid. I could be wrong. And maybe that the level of comprehension presented here is useful. And if so, I would love to see comments on that. Again, in this world where nuance is immoral, it's very hard for me to understand who I'm talking to at any given time. I go to these conferences. It's nice because I get to understand the demographics. That's weird. Sprouted, yeah. I get to understand the demographics a little bit better, the audience. And then, it's nice to get to tailor the discussion to the comprehension and the specialization of the attendees. And online, you don't get that same privilege, which is a shame because you go into this, for me, like right now, I have no concept of who I'm talking to whatsoever. I think the mistake I probably often make in the space is that I talk to my peers, but like I don't feel bad about that. It just seems more honest. Everyone wants an oracle who has the hidden knowledge, who is the Miss Cleo, who can de-risk the future. But I don't think that those people exist, or when they do, I don't think they present as that. I think what they present as is probably somebody who's looking themselves for answers and has a great deal of nuance and trepidation even on navigating the future. But there's something about this space that attracts a certain type of person. It's the Hail Mary pass people that are like, in many ways, distracting the conversation. The person who thinks that he's going to, put $100, his life savings, into the space. So he's 18 years old, and he's going to turn that into $1 billion. That seem to get all of the intolerance and make an inordinate amount of influence over the standards of the space, and it's very detrimental to the progress because the decorum gets lowered and progress gets withheld. And absent governance and leadership, that's the way of things. What's my favorite slice of pizza? I don't eat pizza. The calorie to gratification ratio is just too high. But it is good. Okie dokie. No, I think that's it. I'll end the stream. So tomorrow, see what my schedule's like, just so you guys know me. Yeah, if you're new to my platform, and you haven't seen me before, check me out. I do Bitcoin Uncensored. check Vin out for that matter. Vin Armani Show, who's in the channel. He's an awesome person who I find to be a contemporary of mine in wonderful standing. It came out weird. I just like the guy. Give him some attention. See you tomorrow. I got lunch. I may go on tomorrow and do a monologue. For those who don't know, I do these monologues usually at the end of my shows, where I talk about things that interest me, with some degree of Q&A component to it. And I think I will be doing that tomorrow. I also do interviews. So on Monday morning, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing Roger Ver. And that'll be a great show. I have all kinds of things to talk to him about. I haven't decided exactly what, but I like very much Roger Ver. He's always been a stellar friend of mine. And despite the controversy and even my own snippiness, he's been a wonderful friend. So we're going to talk to him about the space and about the prison politics that seem to invade Bitcoin and what we can do about them. I think that's it. Let's see if there's anything else on the channel. You're the best, Vin. I'll see. I guess in December. Oh yeah, I'm going to San Francisco, going to Block World Conference. What, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? So I'll be in San Fran. Come out to Block World or the Litecoin Summit. I'm also going to that conference, and you can meet me there, and we can talk about reification of blockchain, which needs to trend because like that's where the action's gonna be. If you ask me. Peace out, party people. Thanks for having me on, guys.